The hugely popular manga Oshi no Ko concluded its serialization of about 4.5 years in the weekly magazine Young Jump issue released on November 14, 2024. We interviewed Akasaka, who mainly worked on the original story, about his current feelings upon completing the manga. How do you feel now that the serialization of Oshi no Ko has ended after about 4.5 years?
I want to take it easy for a while. Right now, I want to do something more rooted in daily life.
I guess during the serialization of Oshi no Ko, you weren't able to live a calm life, were you?
Even so, it was much better than when I was serializing Kaguya-sama. Back then, I wasn't living a human life at all. This time, since I could focus only on the original story, I gradually started thinking maybe it's okay to put more emphasis on daily life and actually live it. Right now, I'm thinking I might want to try farming or something.
You revealed in the past that the rough plot of Oshi no Ko was already set from the beginning of the serialization. But did the story progress as you had envisioned until its completion?
Yes, the ending went as expected. However, with Oshi no Ko, we clearly separated the parts of the story that were decided from the start and the parts that were not when creating it. You can progress the story by deciding everything from the beginning, and I used to be that kind of creator, but I think my method changed after creating my previous work, Kaguya-sama. With my current method, sometimes the inner side of the characters, which even I as the author hadn't seen, suddenly becomes visible, and I want to love that as the characters' personalities and be a creator who values that. As a result, it has become almost impossible to create by deciding everything from 1 to 10 like before. So, while the ending of Oshi no Ko was decided, I think it is also a manga that carefully depicted the characters, and I believe that has become a unique characteristic of my work.
The most notable example of that is Memucho, right? She was originally intended as a supporting character, but thanks also to the artwork of Mengo Yokoyari-sensei, she became your favorite and was promoted to a main character. This episode is famous. Were there any other examples where a character unexpectedly moved on their own and changed the impression they gave?
Aqua, definitely. I think his personality became much more delicate. At first, Aqua was driven by emotions that anyone could understand. But in the latter half of the story, he became a character who doesn't show his feelings outwardly and keeps them secret even from the readers.
Was that the result of realizing that Aqua was a character carrying something deeper than you had initially thought?
Due to various events, he developed many different emotions, and as a result, the emotional movements inside him became more complex. I think it was somewhat unkind not to show that to the readers, but that was one of the things I wanted to do with Oshi no Ko.
In recent years, it seems like the final episodes of huge content like Evangelion, Attack on Titan, and Jujutsu Kaisen have been coming one after another. I feel that your work, Oshi no Ko, is also a work that follows in that line. Were there parts about how to end such big content that you were concerned about?
I do think there are more manga ending shortly these days. In an industry with fast consumption, I feel that authors have a strong desire to end their works as interesting works. Among that, being able to end serialized manga at their preferred timing and in the way they want to end it, I think as a creator, it's become a good era. As for my Oshi no Ko, I also have the feeling that I want to continue the original work as long as the anime continues.
That was unexpected.
But since there's also Mango in charge of the art, we want to continue as creators who can have people read our next work again, so for that, I thought the serialization has to remain interesting until the very end.
In a previous interview, you mentioned that you felt hesitant about keeping Mango tied down to Oshi no Ko for a long time.
Of course, that's true as well. Mango Sensei is someone who can draw manga on their own. Oshi no Ko started because I begged Mango Sensei to be in charge of the art. So in that sense, I think Oshi no Ko is a selfish work of mine. That's why it has to end while it's still an interesting work. I've always had the feeling that I want it to end as a good work for both the readers and Mango Sensei.
Your manga, Oshi no Ko, was adapted into an anime and became a social phenomenon together with the opening theme song, Idol by Yoasobi. How did you view such a phenomenon?
Oshi no Ko is the first work after I declared that I would stop drawing manga and focus solely on story original creation. But honestly, it hit in a way that made me think, it might be difficult to have a bigger hit than this. So I feel the hurdle for the next work is incredibly high, and I wonder, can I make such a good work? So I'm thinking maybe I should quietly live by growing crops.
No, growing crops sounds nice too, but we're looking forward to your next work.
Yes.
Did the social phenomenon surrounding Oshi no Ko itself have any impact on the work?
Of course, I think it did have an impact. The original idea behind the manga, Oshi no Ko, was the desire to create a work with someone else. In fact, the work includes symbolic direction that represents creating with someone else, and the anime and theme song are part of that. I have the awareness that all the related Oshi no Ko projects together form one group creating the work. If anything, one of the themes depicted in Oshi no Ko might have been creating a work with someone else. That's a part of what I think. The work portrayed the miscommunication within the industry where things that cannot be made alone, like manga, anime, and stage plays, are created with the help of others, as well as the communication between the characters involved and the fans.
Is that original desire to create together with someone something that comes from your experience drawing your previous manga, Kaguya-sama?
I think it means I became a bit more mature through Kaguya-sama. When a work spreads in the world, it's not just the manga itself that spreads. It spreads through media mix, advertising for the work, and the various efforts of the publisher. I realized there are limits to what I can do alone and came to understand the importance of connections between people and their work. That was a big thing for me.
The person who worked closest with you on Oshi no Ko was Mango Yokoyari, who handled the artwork. Have you talked with Mango-sensei about the social phenomenon of Oshi no Ko?
Sometimes when I meet her directly, that topic comes up. Of course, I think our feelings about the success of our joint work differ somewhat. However, when a work hits, both feelings of joy and fear arise, and I feel we mostly talked about the fear side. Certainly, there are many things that make us happy about the success, but the responsibility toward the work has become heavier than that. I think that is the common opinion between Mango-sensei and me.
One of the points about Oshi no Ko that left an impression on me was how the story repeatedly depicted social media flare-ups.
When creating the story for Oshi no Ko, I had the awareness of making it a showbiz story of the Reiwa era, around 2020, so I think that had a big influence. There have been several past manga works about the entertainment industry, so to differentiate, I deliberately incorporated contemporary elements into my story. Also, I think my own experience is related. Manga artists have very few opportunities to talk directly with fans, usually only at autograph sessions or events. So my image of my readers and fans tends to lean toward people on social media. And I thought that must be the same for modern idols who manage social media. Including YouTubers and many other performers of the Reiwa era, I thought fans equals people on social media is how they are perceived. So I wrote about social media in depth in the story.
Oshi no Ko was your first work after declaring yourself as a story author. Please tell us what you were able to do precisely because it was a collaboration with Mango-sensei, the illustrator.
The reason the manga hit among younger audiences is undoubtedly thanks to Mango-sensei. I believe the charm of Mango-sensei's art is something I could never have achieved alone. So I truly feel that Oshi no Ko fulfilled my desire to create a work with someone, and it was a project that really showed the meaning of working with others.
How was the actual experience of working by separating the storyboard and the illustration process when creating the manga?
Mango-sensei and I have similar hobbies, but are not the same person. So naturally, there are parts where we don't synchronize in making the manga. But I intend for those parts to become the flavor of the work through the storyboard. So for me, it was very easy to work with.
Also, I think I learned a lot from her. For example, how to apply subtle direction, how to create the atmosphere and pacing of the manga. Manga artists who have drawn quite a few works tend to have somewhat similar techniques and cards to play, and when to play which card becomes the author's unique style. In that regard, working with Mango-sensei often surprised me with, so this is the timing to play this card, and I was influenced by her in that way.
Now that the magazine serialization has ended and all chapters are complete, How do you feel about what Oshinoko ultimately became?
That is exactly what I have been thinking about recently. What was Oshinoko really?
That's something you can think about precisely because the serialization has just ended.
The significance of Oshinoko, or what I wanted to express through this manga, was decided from the beginning. That is, discommunication. In other words, what does it mean to relate to others? Especially the relationship between idols and fans depicted in Oshinoko has, I think, inherently distorted parts that seem to go against nature. How can one face such difficult and distorted things with a healthy mind? I thought that depicting that is, in other words, depicting communication. Moreover, as the author, I also have the feeling that I would be happy if people who read this work could take something back to the real world and use it as a reference. In that sense, I think my previous work, Kaguya-sama, was also drawn with the same theme.
Indeed. Although Kaguya-sama is humorous in form, discommunication was clearly presented from the start in the story.
People who cannot maintain good relationships in human communication, that has always been something I consistently want to depict in my works. So I think it ultimately comes back to that when making manga. That includes the communication within the industry depicted in Oshinoko, as well as the discommunication between fans and idols. It's a work with a wish, imagining it would be nice if these kinds of people could gradually approach each other better. I hope that happens. I think that was Oshinoko.
I believe that is precisely what defines Akasaka Sensei's authorship. But was there any trigger or reason that made you confront communication between people so directly?
Actually, I'm not good at communicating with people, but on the contrary, many people around me often say I'm good at communication.
Yes, right now, talking with you, I don't feel any discomfort at all.
Since around high school, I've been doing things very much like the character Akane Kurokawa from Oshinoko.
Eh?
Like her, I dabbled in psychology and studied human behavior patterns.
Ah, indeed. Akane Kurokawa also used profiling through psychology in her acting.
Through those experiences, I learned and applied the understanding that, people feel uncomfortable or unpleasant in these kinds of situations, and that helped brighten my life in the past. So I want to give back the experience I gained there to the readers. Here is a way that made my life a little easier, so I hope it can help others who are struggling in the same way. That's what I think.
Though it takes the form of a manga, it feels like Akasaka Sensei is passing on the baton he once received to the readers.
That's why, for me, when I'm drawing manga, I'm a good person. I always intend to create manga with goodwill. Of course, some people might find that annoying, but I draw because I want to depict that. For example, by portraying the workings of the entertainment industry in the story, if readers think, it's this tough, so let's be a little considerate toward entertainers, I'd be happy. For me, what matters is after you finish reading the manga, so I hope to improve the actions of those who read it even just a little. Even if it's just a tiny bit, I hope it becomes a manga that raises the overall happiness in this world. That's my wish.
So it was a work imbued with a wish, wasn't it?
Yes. Of course, some people might feel uncomfortable by depicting the inside of the idol world, but if I can draw what current idols want to say but can't, and that helps them even a little, then I think it's okay if some people feel just a little uncomfortable. That's part of how I feel.
Lastly, may I ask about your future work plans or manga projects you want to create?
Well, I'm pretty tired, so I want to take a break for a while.
I thought so.
But even though I want to rest, there are manga projects I absolutely want to draw in the future. There are still moments when a sudden idea pops into my head like, hey, this is really good.
Oh, that's really intriguing.
And of course, I intend to continue as a story original author, so I strongly want to create stories that match the individuality of the artists who draw the pictures instead of me.
When Akasaka Sensei announced in 2022, upon the end of the serialization of Kaguya-sama, that he would retire from being a manga artist and focus solely on being a manga story original author, it caused a big stir. Could you tell us again about that decision?
I had a strong desire to create many works going forward. Originally, I'm the kind of person who, if I have to spend time on drawing, would rather make storyboards.
There are quite a few manga where the story and illustration are done collaboratively by different people, but your declaration that you would no longer do the illustrations yourself had a big impact at the time.
The primary reason is the issue of limited time. There are many people who are better at drawing than I am. I might draw manga myself if I really want to, but I feel like drawing is fine as a hobby now.
Did you get any reactions from your peers in the industry?
Since we're all manga artists, they asked me, why did you say that? And when I answered, because I don't want to do the art, that was the end of the conversation.
Among professional manga artists, most don't say much, huh?
But in that sense, I might not understand the feelings of people who want to draw their own manga art. My start as a manga artist was that I wanted to create my own story. I want to ask other manga artists from the opposite perspective. If the publisher said you could become a full-time story original author, would you do it?
Indeed. That answer is something I'm curious about.
The reason my declaration was such a big deal in the manga industry is probably because many manga artists, as a whole, like drawing pictures. For those people, I think they want to satisfy both the desire to create stories and the desire to draw pictures at the same time. But I am the type who can feel this character is cute just by making storyboards.
I see.
Actually, the origin of my declaration was originally a message to the editor-in-charge at the publisher. I will no longer draw manga pictures. I sent it saying, if that's okay, let's work together.
It's been about 2 years since you declared yourself a full-time story original author. Do you think it was a good decision?
I think it was good. It was good for me, and it's easier for the editor and publisher too. The people involved probably think, let's not assign illustration work to him anymore.
That's true.
Also, being able to focus only on the manga story is very easy. Drawing manga art actually requires constant updating. I have to study drawing, of course, and also update my drawing equipment. The scariest thing is that the world changes toward new art styles, and more skilled artists appear. Keeping up with that trend is a big mental strain and requires a lot of effort.
I think updating is necessary even as a story writer, but you, Akasaka Sensei, thought that updating the story would come more naturally than updating the drawing?
Yes, for me that is more enjoyable and something I want to keep updating. I had the feeling that even if I keep drawing forever, I would gradually stop updating to fit the times. So I wanted to try making manga by partnering with someone who is giving 100% effort in drawing. Of course, it's not just about being good at drawing. The person also has to be good at manga composition to ask them to do the manga artwork.
By the way, I heard that you originally aimed to be a story author and reluctantly decided to draw the illustrations for your previous work, Kaguya-sama.
Honestly, I thought I probably can't make manga. But to become a full-time story author, you have to take the steps as a manga artist first. Because if someone with no track record says, I'm a story author, please assign a really good artist to my story, it probably wouldn't work.
That's true.
So I actually serialized a few manga and built up some track record. Then I thought, this time for sure, and went to the publisher saying, please let me be a story author. But I couldn't. That was the beginning of the manga Kaguya-sama.
It's amazing that the manga Kaguya-sama became a huge hit, but by succeeding there, you were able to become a story author, right?
That's right. If it weren't for the previous work, Kaguya-sama, I don't think Oshi no Ko would have become the work it is now. So I have no regrets about drawing Kaguya-sama myself, and I don't hold any grudges against the editor in charge. In the end, I'm glad I did it, and at the time I was very anxious, thinking, can I do this? Overcoming that became a very important experience for me.
Earlier you talked about updating in the creative process, and I think input is a very important element for manga artists. What genre have you taken in the most during your career as a creator?
The internet. There are so many times when men's opinions and women's opinions are completely different overall, so I wanted to see both perspectives, and I often looked at sites where many women's honest opinions gathered. I think that input was a big reason I was able to create a manga with a female protagonist like Kaguya.
The opinions of women which aren't visible when interacting face-to-face were exposed and became known through the internet. That's why I think I was able to create that work.
Earlier, I talked about how acting like Akane Kurokawa in the story made my own life easier, and this might be a similar example. Before I looked at the internet, I couldn't imagine how others thought, but from the information written online, I built a hypothesis like maybe humans are like this, and that became the manga, I guess.
It was very surprising that your biggest input was the internet and the communication and inner revelations that happen there.
When I create manga characters, I place importance on how their personalities were formed and how they became who they are. In that sense, I really like drawing past episodes that explain the secrets of characters that only existed in my mind.
Akasaka Sensei, you are currently 36 years old and have finished serializing 2 popular manga. I would also like to ask about your specific work methods for producing hit works. Do you have any routines when working?
I don't really have a routine, it's more like I do it when I get anxious.
So the manga deadlines become your inspiration.
Also, I tend to be forgetful and have trouble maintaining concentration, but I think it was an important task in creating manga to properly investigate my own traits and learn how people in similar situations deal with them. Through that, I learned to give up on things that are useless no matter how hard I try, and what kind of things I can handle.
That's where the analysis and hypothesis you mentioned earlier come in handy, right?
Exactly. Especially, I often take physical measures, like if I'm at home and don't feel like working, I'll go outside, because if I physically go somewhere without games, I don't have to play games. I often visit my publisher, Shueisha, and that's also one of my coping methods. I think relying on someone is also fine.
The influence of the physical environment is indeed strong.
I accept and understand the parts of myself I just like head on and then deal with them. I think that is something I was able to do when I turned 35.
I believe the harshness of weekly serialization is a major issue in the environment surrounding manga artists. Is there anything you pay attention to regarding your health?
Rather than paying attention, I physically can't pull all-nighters anymore. At night, I get sleepy and just fall asleep. My bedtime keeps getting earlier and earlier. But even Mizuki Shigeru sensei said if you sleep, you won't die young, so I honestly try to sleep.
So you can't stay up all night like you did in your 20s, but that's actually been good for your health.
That's right. Also, quitting energy drinks was a big change. I still drink a little coffee, but I realized that too much sugar isn't good for the body, so now water tastes great.
Know your own traits and deal with them physically. That sounds like advice that could help anyone.
I hope so. I used to say, I'll do it properly about various things, but now I make sure to say, I can't do it properly. Even when I'm late for work, instead of saying, I'll be there in 5 minutes and then arriving in 10, I say up front, it will take 10 minutes and then arrive in 5.
That's important.
I think being able to not pretend you can do something means you've grown up. In the end, that way no one ends up unhappy. Although when it comes to manga manuscripts, I still say, it's okay, I'll finish it tonight.
Lastly, you are currently 36 years old, but is there anything you want to accomplish by 40?
Weight training. I've tried several times in the past, but failed to continue, so I want to succeed. I'm really frustrated with how poorly I control my emotions. If I can succeed with weight training, I think that will be the moment I feel my traits have changed, so I want to become that kind of person. That's my aspiration.